Welcome to the Healing Chronic Illness Summit. And today we're getting started with our first interview for the summit. And I'm having the honor to speak with Amber Visicaro from Michigan. And she's an amazing healing person from the medical medium community. She's had an amazing healing story and healed herself from her symptoms within just 6 months from most of the things. Yeah, and she's a very great inspiration and is helping a lot of people all over the world now. Welcome, Amber, and thank you for joining in.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So can you tell us a little bit more about your story and what you're coming from, how you came to the medical medium lifestyle, and what you did before that?
Yes, absolutely. So my story kind of starts with the way that I grew up in experiencing a lot of trauma. And it was really my emotional and spiritual healing journey that led me into alternative health. So when I was 18, I was kind of forced into a path of either having to deal with my emotional stuff or going down a really bad path. And so as I started working through all of this stuff at a young age, I started being drawn to eating healthier and to making other lifestyle changes, just purely out of just wanting to feel as good as I possibly could, because I recognized that how I was living and what I was doing and how I was raised didn't leave me in a state of feeling good at all. So then my mission just became, to feel as good as possible. Growing up, I had chronic colds and flus and cold sores. I was constantly sick, but I didn't see that as being a problem. I didn't see that as not being normal, because everybody else that was around me was always sick too. I would get headaches and migraines. I had really bad anxiety and depression and panic attacks. And again, everyone in my family would just kind of tout that off as being normal. Everybody in my family has chronic illness, so I was just kind of raised in that environment as being normal. So then at the age of 18, I started cleaning up my diet. I went from eating a standard American diet, being severely addicted to sugar and processed food, and alcohol and a whole bunch of other substances, to like going organic, 100% vegan, mostly raw overnight.
And wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, in theory, but what happened went way too fast, and I completely underestimated how toxic my body was. So, now I'm really grateful that I went through that, because that is like, I had to learn through my own experience why you can't go fast like that and why you have to make systematic changes. Because what happened to me was I started off with not really having too many prevalent symptoms. And then after I made that huge dietary change and lifestyle change all at once, all of a sudden my whole body broke out in acne. And I had had clear skin my whole life previously. And then I started having really bad fatigue. I gained weight, a lot of weight. I started blowing up like a balloon with like edema. And then I actually started having health problems surface more and more and more. And so I was just completely mind blown, so confused at how I was eating so clean and so healthy. And I kept thinking, there must be something that I'm missing. People were telling me, I'm protein deficient or this and that. So then I kept working even harder to make my diet cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, and things weren't getting better. So then I thought that after, this is fast forward a couple years later, after I became certified as a holistic health coach to try to figure out the answers, and started working with a bunch of people, and noticed that everybody who I was working with had underlying stuff. They would have a thyroid disorder, or they would have this or that. And I felt like, how can I help this person in terms of their nutrition, or anyone for that matter, when most people have underlying issues? Like, there's something more to this puzzle, So then I thought that becoming a naturopathic doctor would be the answer. I thought, oh, that's like the holy grail. It's science and research, and it's alternative medicine. And the program that I was looking into is very rigorous. I thought that I would learn everything that I could possibly need to know. about health, and that would help me figure out what was going on for me and also be able to help other people. So I started college as a pre-med student, and what happened was 2 years, halfway through my pre-med program, I got really sick. That's when I ended up getting, it started with really severe chronic UTIs that I would have like every week. And they would be so severe that like it really impaired my ability to function. I had to call into work all the time. My boss was like, I was really like on the edge of getting fired because I wasn't very functional. And then when I would go to work, I still had underlying what I call UTI like symptoms, or just kind of irritation and discomfort that it's really challenging to focus, you know, when you're in pain like that. So then it ended up progressing, my UTIs, to the point where I was hospitalized every other week for a period of months on end. And they just kept giving me antibiotics and telling me that, you know, I just kept getting the same infection over and over again, which never made sense to me. And so meanwhile, all this is happening. I'm like digging into all of my medical books. I'm like doing all of this research, looking into all of these studies, everything I can possibly find, and nothing is making sense to me. And I'm really starting to realize how much science and research doesn't have the answers. And so I ended up just like pushing my doctors. I'm like, this makes no sense. You're just going to keep putting me on antibiotics that are destroying my liver and my kidneys and my body, you know, and I'm not feeling good. And I keep getting the same thing over and over again. How does that happen? And so then they ended up diagnosing me with interstitial cystitis, which basically, if you translate that in medical terminology, it just means inflammation of the bladder. They don't know what causes it. It's unknown, cause unknown. So at that point, after getting diagnosed and basically just being handed more antibiotics and pain medication, I knew that they weren't going to be able to give me the answers that I was looking for. And so then I went on the merry-go-round of visiting naturopathic doctors and other alternative practitioners and doing energy work and all of that. And certain things, you know, like going on an elimination diet, like my naturopath had prescribed, they would help me temporarily, like a little bit, to feel a little bit better, or to prolong an infection. Like I would go 2 weeks without getting UTI versus 1 week, but then I would get an infection again, and it would come back, and it would be stronger, and it would be more painful, and I would need more of the pain medication. And then there was one point where, so at this time, I was working full time, I was on my own and having to support myself, and I was in school full time as well. So like 7 days a week, I had to like force myself to be functional through all of this pain from like the time that I got up until the time that I went to bed. And there was no downtime. So there was a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on me to like figure it out and to not be in so much pain. So it got to the point where there was one day where I had to miss so many of my classes that I was doing, you know, as best as I could with school. And I knew that I tried to communicate to my professors what was going on. They didn't really understand the condition. They didn't understand why like a bladder issue would leave me not being able to keep up, you know, with my coursework as well. They didn't understand the pain, you know, that was involved. And I had other symptoms that were developing along with all of this too. I started getting really bad brain fog. I had severe chronic fatigue to the point where I would like come home from work or from school and just like lay like a starfish, like in my living room, just like so dead, defeated. And so it got to the point where there was one day where I said in my head, all I have to do to pass this class is I just have to take this exam. I just have to show up to this exam. I know that, you know, I've studied the material as much as I can without needing to go to every class. So I was on my way to take that exam. And I remember I needed to walk across campus, not very far, but it was like halfway through the walk. The pain was so severe that I was like hunched over and I had to sit down. Like I could not walk to my class to take my exam. And so sitting on that bench, it just hit me. I just started bawling, and there were people like walking by, and it just really hit me like how bad it was, and that what I was doing wasn't working, and it wasn't going to be a sustainable path. Um, the infection had spread to my kidneys, so I needed, medical treatment at that time. And thankfully, so after that point, I ended up being bedridden for a period of time. My mom had gotten me the Medical Medium books for Christmas the year prior. And at the time, I remember thinking, what is this guy going to tell me that I haven't researched already? Or like, what new, information is he going to tell me about my condition? So I just totally passed them off and never looked at them again. And as I was sitting there, bedridden, the books popped up in my head, and I thought, okay, well, while I'm sitting here, I might as well just go look into them. And sorry, at the time, there was just the one. It was the first book. So I grabbed the first book, very, very skeptical. I opened the first page, and as soon as I started reading it, I was bawling. Like, it resonated so much with me on such a deep intuitive level that I knew there was something to this. And then after I read the book, it was like I couldn't get enough. I read the whole book in like a day. And it also put so many missing pieces together for me of everything that I had studied throughout my pre-med journey. So I understood from him, although for anyone else who suffers with interstitial cystitis, I know Anthony hasn't necessarily talked about it very much explicitly with that term, but he has said that it's caused by strep that sits in the bladder and causes scar tissue. It causes damage to the tissue, and that's what science and research hasn't discovered. And so that makes so much sense to me, because I had strep throat my entire life, on and off and on and off and on and off, and was given so many antibiotics. And so he also talks about how strep becomes resistant to antibiotics and then grows stronger. So you have a chronic underlying strep infection that's just coming in and out of dormancy, or in and out of severity levels. It's not that you're getting reinfected with the same thing over and over and over again, which that makes so much logical sense, right? So much more than the alternative. So I was sold. I was like full in. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. So I overhauled my diet. At the time, I had been plant-based for years leading up to that. And even that wasn't enough at that point. I needed to know that, soy and canola oil feed strep. And I needed to know what specific supplements to take. I had already tried a ton of herbal and other alternative remedies that were prescribed to me by my naturopath. That didn't work. It didn't get me better. I needed a full protocol with no margin of error for me to get better. So I basically pulled all the information together and made myself a plan and a protocol. And within 6 months, I was able to completely reverse my IC, had no symptoms, have not had a UTI once since. It's been almost 3 years since then. I cleared up my fatigue. I cleared up my brain fog. I cleared up pretty much every other symptom. The only thing that lingered for a little bit longer was my acne. And so now at this point, 3 years later, I still get a pimple or two here and there, but it's very normal. And so I'm still working on my liver, and the little bit of strep that remains. But other than that, I have no symptoms.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
So what did you put yourself together? What kind of protocol? Did you just look up what he recommends in the book, or also use your knowledge and information from the naturopathic education?
Yeah, good question. So I stuck very clearly to what he talks about in the book, but I focused it on my main symptoms, which were the strep-related symptoms. But then I also added in the information that he talks about for brain fog and fatigue and for my other symptoms. And then I just kind of put everything together in order of priority like that, which is now what I do for clients. So when you've got multiple symptoms, it helps I think people get overwhelmed with the information and how to combine protocols for multiple symptoms. So a tip that I give to people who are doing that for themselves is to just prioritize your symptoms. So what's the thing that bothers you the most, or what are the top 3 to 5 symptoms that bother you the most, and how can you, what foods and what supplements have like a crossover, like they're helpful for all of those, or most of those. Those are the things you want to focus on the most. That's pretty much what I did. So I did, full supplement protocol. I, at the time, did a full food protocol before he ever released Liver Rescue or really talked about the liver so much. There was still the piece, he talked about fat a bit in the first book, but not nearly to the extent that he's talked about it now. So there were things, that of course I know now that I didn't at the time. But it was pretty comprehensive, the plan.
That's really awesome how you healed so fast from such a severe symptom.
Yes, it was very fast. And I know my story, for some people, it inspires them. And for others, they will compare themselves to it and think, well, why am I not healing after 6 months? And so I like to talk about that a little and say that, I think that a part of why it was so fast for me was because I had spent years prior being plant-based and being actually quite close to applying medical medium information, and because everything that I went through when I was 18 and I was like juicing, doing lots of intense cleansing, although I gained weight and broke out and had symptoms, it was like everything that was in my liver, deep inside my organs, kind of came up, so I went through my detox phase without knowing that that's what I was doing really intensely for years leading up to applying medical medium. So that's what most people go through when they first start applying it, maybe not to that extent. Because if you do it more in a more systematic way, it shouldn't be that intense. That's not necessarily what I'm recommending, but that all of that, the detox that I did do prior, I think played a role in how much just tweaking things in the right way was able to help me so much so quickly.
Yes, I happen to go kind of a similar way like you. I started from one day being a normal eater, not even completely vegan, but already into the vegan foods. And then I switched to the raw vegan fruit diet from one day to another and went on a banana island. And after a year, then I met Medical Medium and won the first book of his. And yeah, it also struck me and totally made sense what's in his book. So I started applying it. And then after another half a year or so, I started getting kind of a rash in my face and didn't know what's wrong, and lots of styes, one stye after another. And yeah, that just kept me a little bit demotivated, and I slowed down the detox foods from his book a little bit, just to release some of the symptoms that were coming up.
Yeah, I think that's so important for people to get the right pace, and also to know the difference and to be able to figure out what's happening in their body. Because when you have a symptom come up when you're eating really clean and when you're on a protocol that's designed for healing, when you have a symptom come up or you have an existing symptom increase, it can really freak people out. You want to make sure that something's not going wrong, or that the protocol's not working, or that you're going backward. And I think it's important for people to know that there's a fine line between detox symptoms and a flare. And doing too much detox at once can trigger adrenaline, and adrenaline feeds pathogens more than anything. So going too fast is not necessarily the answer, and you want to find that kind of middle ground. But then it's important for people to not be afraid that if sometimes you get like a skin rash that will come out, for example, that can happen when you're getting into deeper layers of your liver and you're releasing old storage banks of neurotoxins or dermatoxins or both. And it's not necessarily new toxins that are getting produced. It doesn't mean that you're aggravating or feeding a virus more. It means that you're cleansing actually on a deeper level. It can.
Yeah, and sometimes that's really uncomfortable for people, because I remember for me, I've never had skin issues, and then all of a sudden I had to deal with rosacea and all of the red face and also some kind of acne around my chin.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Symptoms are not easy to deal with. Flares are not easy. Detox is not easy. And this journey is not for the faint of heart. This is for healing warriors, and everybody here. I really feel like everybody who's even making the effort to learn medical medium information, in my opinion, is a healing warrior. It takes a lot of, I think, strength and courage to learn about something, or to even be open to something alternative when you've been through so much, and to have even just like a little sliver of hope. I think that's very powerful.
Yes, and also applying the protocols and staying off of the no foods and switching to a healthier diet. That's already a huge step for a lot of people.
Yes, enormous. Yeah.
And for some, it's even better to switch slowly instead of overdoing it in the beginning, like we did, maybe.
Yes, exactly. For most people, it will end up better for them to go slowly and systematically. Yes.
So did you also had a time when you, I know you already switched to a plant-based diet earlier before that,
Mhm.
but did you get any cravings for unhealthy food during your healing journey?
I did. I had, I've been, and still to this day, I just thought about this the other day. Now, so many years into being plant based, and years also into applying medical medium, that I never thought that I would be the kind of person who would eat this way. Like I grew up more addicted to sugar than anyone that I've ever met. I I had to have something chocolate after every single meal, like breakfast. I would eat a candy bar afterward. And that's how I grew up, as that being the norm. It was all about sweets and candy and sugar and junk food. So I didn't ever have, what I thought at the time, like willpower to, I gave into every craving all the time. And I just thought, whatever, I didn't think too much about it. And so as I started making changes with my diet, I had a lot of cravings, when I was before medical medium. And I think I kind of got through that enough to where when I started applying medical medium, they weren't too intense. But I did get cravings for eggs. I did get cravings for bread. I loved like the gooiness, of
Yeah, I
bread, the
still
texture.
get that feeling.
My gosh. And
Fresh baked bread.
yes. Yes, those were the things that I missed the most. And cheese. Oh my God. People think that when I was younger, my favorite food as a teenager, I can't believe I'm saying this, was I used to take like string cheese, like mozzarella cheese, and I would put it on a plate and microwave it just by
I did
itself.
that too.
Did you?
Yes.
I would take a fork and eat straight up gooey melted cheese, and that was like my favorite. Sorry if I'm making anyone hungry. But yeah, again, like I never thought that I would get over it. And it just, the more that what I would do, and what I now, help clients with too, is when you're limiting yourself in one way, you can have more freedom in other ways if that makes it easier. Some people can have a little bit more leeway with their program or with their protocol if it makes it easier for them to stick to it, so it doesn't feel like it requires so much force, to combat cravings. So for example, the priority is to avoid the no foods, but like maybe you could have a little bit of something with like even vinegars, like just a small amount for some people. Some people tolerate Vinegar is better than others. For people who have like really a severely impacted liver, that won't work, but there are like some dressings, you know, that are pre-made that have vinegars in them that some people can do like a little bit of that here and there. That's not necessarily going to feed a pathogen, even though it's not a great thing. But when you're transitioning, if you can eliminate the no foods, and having a dressing that has a little bit of vinegar in it helps you transition, and it helps make it a lot easier for you to get salads in, for example. That can be helpful. And then once you get used to that, then the next step, maybe a couple months later, is to start making your own dressings and to then eliminate the vinegar. Just as one example. So there are foods that like are not necessarily productive foods, and can cause other, you know, they're not great in other ways, but if they don't directly feed a pathogen, sometimes those things can help you feel like you have more freedom in the very beginning when you're transitioning, if you tolerate them. So, but for me, having lots and lots of glucose, my thing was always sweet cravings. So having lots and lots of glucose really helped me. And I would make things, I would find healthier versions of or replacements for desserts that I really liked before. And I would have just like my go-to recipes that were completely clean and didn't have anything that would hurt me in them, that I would make to satisfy my sweet craving in a way that wasn't going to be harmful. Um, and then over time, my sweet cravings and really all my cravings honestly have like fallen away. Like I really don't have cravings at all, and haven't in a very long time. And it's really unbelievable even for me to say that. But yeah, that's the truth.
You begin to crave more healthy food than the unhealthy foods
Yeah,
once you
and
switch.
yeah, I think that at this point, I know that nutrition it's fuel. And so I just always think of how is this going to feel in my body? And I have no desire to eat anything of any kind ever that's not going to make me feel really, really good, you know? So I know that everything that I eat throughout the day is designed to do that. And so that leaves me with no desire to veer off from that, you know?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have clients that struggle with getting better, is there something that you recommend them, like switching up their supplement protocol or the foods that they eat? Because
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are also some people that already do the medical medium lifestyle for a little while, and then they feel like they're still stuck and have a lot of symptoms left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that a lot from people. Um, on Instagram, that's probably like the most common message that I get is I've been applying medical medium, you know, for this many years or for this many months, and I feel like I'm not getting better. So what I've seen in my practice, I really break that down for people. And there's such a wide spectrum of issues that can come up with that statement. So first of all, a lot of people think that they've been applying medical medium information when they're missing really key pieces. So maybe they have been eliminating no foods, but maybe they don't understand the fat concept, and they're still having, you know, higher than like the 10 to 15% of their calories range in fat. I think a lot of people think that like, oh, if I just have a little bit, um, how do I say this, of like, there's such a wide spectrum. So I have some people who think that they're applying medical medium information, but are still having like a little bit of meat here and there. And that can be enough for some people, but if you've been following the protocol or applying the information for a long time and you're not seeing results, like that's a factor to look at. Then there are people who really have been eating super clean and taking a boatload of supplements and doing everything to like the nth degree and still haven't seen results. And in those cases, there's a lot that can be impacting that. There's always something missing. So if you are not moving forward and things are not getting better, there's always something missing, whether it's that you went too fast and triggered adrenaline and you need to slow things down and actually peel back layers. I actually see that more commonly than pretty much anything else in my practice with this issue. And then once you kind of peel things back a little bit and get a really tailored protocol that maybe has a lot fewer supplements and maybe even lower doses that your body can process better, that then actually starts to move people forward, and then they start feeling better. And then I'm trying to think if there's another example. Those are the two biggest things that I see, those kind of different sides of the spectrum, but there are a lot of other things that can come up with that. And I would encourage somebody who's feeling that way to really first analyze, okay, because sometimes people will tell themselves that it's not working when like they have had improvements, but maybe don't understand what markers of progress are. So having symptoms not get worse, that actually is a sign of progress in of itself. Sometimes people go into applying the information with a certain outcome in mind. Like they'll have 20 symptoms, but like really, really be bothered by their weight, for example. And so slowly over time, they'll have maybe 5 of those symptoms completely disappear and go away through applying the information. But because they were so focused on wanting their weight to come down, they'll feel like it's not working and they'll forget about the symptoms that actually have improved, or like I said, the fact that they haven't gotten worse. So that's the first thing that I would encourage anybody who feels like that to really analyze, like, okay, have I had even just like micro amounts of progress? Everybody heals at a different pace, and sometimes you will have just small things that will start to fall away so gradually over time. Like I even, within that 6-month period, I actually didn't even really realize how much I had healed until I went for a checkup. I went to my doctor for a checkup, and they had me weigh myself. And I didn't have a scale at home, so the only time that I had been weighed previously was my 6-month prior checkup. And so they weighed me, and I was 30 pounds. The nurses were like, "Oh my God, what did you do? You're 30 pounds lighter than you were last time." And I was like, "What? I am?" I wasn't even paying attention to my weight at all because I was just so focused on what was going on. And I knew that I wasn't having UTIs anymore. I knew that I wasn't in pain anymore, but it had happened so gradually that even that was like, it took me a little bit of time to really process how much progress I had actually made. So then after that appointment, I went home and I started making a list of everything that had went away. I was like, oh my God, everything's gone. Like,
check.
Exactly. Even in that short period of time, I didn't even realize how quickly my symptoms had gone. So imagine if you go a year, having symptoms improve, how many things you can forget about or not realize unless you're tracking it. And then there was something else I was going to say. I don't know, maybe it will come to me later.
So did you get started all raw, or did you start with eating like raw till 4 or more cooked foods?
Mm-hmm.
How was that for you?
Yeah, so I did not do fully raw. I had a really hard time actually with raw foods in general at the time that I found Medical Medium. Now I understand that it's because my adrenals had gotten worse. So like when I was younger, when I was 18, I was able to do a little bit more raw, and I detoxed a lot. But then since then, I had been through so many stressful events. My adrenals really tanked, and my nervous system was a lot more sensitive. So I wasn't able to tolerate raw very well in the beginning because it made my adrenals crash. So I actually did more cooked foods. I really didn't do things to like the highest level of, now that there's so much medical medium information out there. I think so many people think that I have to do fully raw. I have to take 30 supplements. I have to like completely eliminate fat in order to heal. And for some people, it does require that or, a similar level, a very high level of application, but in the right way, systematically over time, typically not like right off the bat. Although everybody's different and that can work for some people. For me, I did more cooked foods. I tried to do as much raw as I could. I tried to get in like leafy greens every day. I tried to balance out my cooked food with leafy greens. I was able to tolerate supplements really well, and I had an easier time with that than food because I was so busy with my lifestyle at the time. So I did higher dosages of supplements right off the bat, because I was able to tolerate them. And then with foods, I did lots of fruit and at least a cooked dinner. And honestly, most of the time in the beginning, I did a cooked lunch too, but with like a raw component to it. I grazed. I did that really diligently, and I tried to keep my fat low, but I didn't do perfectly with that either. And I just was really like easy on myself. I think that was a part of why, I think that really helped me to feel good about what I was doing, and also to promote healing in my body, because I was constantly telling myself like, it's okay, you're doing the best that you can. And I knew that I really was. And I think that my mindset and my attitude about it really helped in a lot of ways.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
You're very lucky to have such a great mindset and a great intuition. But that's for most of the females, I guess. They have a very good intuition instead of men. They sometimes don't seem to have that good of an intuition.
Yes, women have a much greater capacity for intuition. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So I have one more last question that I ask every participant. Mm-hmm. If you could start all over again, and would there be anything that you would do differently now, or would you just go the same path that you went to?
I love that question so much. And I think the only thing that I would change would be my lifestyle. I think I would have found a way to give myself more space to process detox, and to process the changes that were happening in my body, and to process you know everything that I was doing, so that it wasn't so like fly by the seat of your pants all the time. And I also would have given myself maybe a little bit more time to like, just in between me healing. And then what I did immediately after was, okay, I healed my body and I feel incredible. And now I want to make everybody feel the same. I want to help everybody else to have the same experience. And so really, really quickly after that, I just was like flooded with clients, and then my business, like became my focus. So maybe I would have given myself a little bit more time. But that would be, I guess the only thing is just, as much as people can, to give themselves like downtime. Downtime is the key. That's the key word. More downtime. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's something that I also struggle with sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
Allowing that time for rest and recharging your own body and energy.
Exactly. And to just shut your brain off and have moments where you don't have to engage your brain, you don't have to think, you just have like complete, true, pure relaxation. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for all of your information. That, I guess it's really helpful for a lot of people. Good. As you're already getting a lot of these questions on Instagram.
Yes, and I'm happy to talk about them. It makes it a lot easier to be able to verbalize them out loud, versus typing. It's really hard to talk about big concepts like this, in text. So I'm always happy to talk about these things, and I hope that it helps anyone, that it can.
I'm sure it will.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining in and taking your time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess we're coming to an end on this summit. Thank you again for your time.
You are so welcome. Thank you so much again for having me.
I'm grateful that I had the pleasure to bring you on.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
So, yeah, that's it for today. And I guess we'll just say goodbye to our viewers, and then they can be excited about the next interview.
Okay.
There's a lot more to come.
Yes, I am so excited for what you're doing. It's incredible.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for listening.
See you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in on this first episode of the Healing Chronic Illness Summit. And I hope that Amber's story offers you some hope and inspiration and can show you that healing is possible, and it's not always fast, but it definitely is possible, and you can heal as well. And yes, if you want to reach out to Amber and check out her website, then I'll put the links down below in the video box, or maybe they'll also be on the right or left side of the video, but I'm sure putting her links in so that you can find her on Instagram and on her website. Thanks so much for tuning in again, and I'm sending you all the love and healing vibes that you need. Stay tuned and see you in the next video with the next interviewer. Get excited. Bye.